Welcome to Work This Way, a labor and employment podcast. I'm Tina Emerson, here with Maynard Nexon attorney Faye Edwards. Good to see you, Faye.
Hey, nice to see you.
Good to see you. Well, today we have Gary Moore. He is the Assistant Dean for Academic Technology and the Executive Director of TechInLaw, the Technology, Innovation, and Law Collaborative at the University of South Carolina School of Law. Gary is also responsible for establishing the School of Law's academic technology strategy and implementing technologies that enhance teaching, learning, and scholarship within the law school. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Tina. I really appreciate that.
Well, so glad to have you here. We're excited to get your insight on current technology considerations for employers in particular.
Correct.
But before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit more about your background with the School of Law?
Sure. So I have been at USC Rice School of Law for 13 years now. It was 13 years last month. And I've been involved in overseeing incorporating technology into the curriculum, working with faculty and staff and students. We started a legal tech seminar series 10 years ago on how technology and innovation affect the law and legal practice. And about 2 years ago, we wanted to have a bigger home for our programming. So we started the Technology Innovation Law Collaborative, otherwise known as TechInLaw. And so we do significant amount of programming, symposiums, legal tech seminars. I'm also involved in co-teaching 2 classes. I'm a co-professor for Intro to Legal Profession, so I oversee the technology competency for 1Ls. And I could talk about some of towards the end about law students and what they're doing with AI. And also for now 11 years, which is amazing, I co-teach technology in the practice of law, which Faye took in her spring of her senior 3L year. I have a junior in college, so that's when sometimes things come
Same here.
Very much responsible for getting technology competency for law students. We've done some really innovative programs, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I love the fact that I'm doing that. I'm also involved in several university committees. I co-chair 2 committees, the Information Technology Community Committee, and also Unite, which is all the college and department IT directors on campus. So I'm very much involved in bringing solutions, with other IT directors and university division IT. So like we're right now doing AI tools. We helped with, ChatGPT having a campus-wide license. We're working with other solutions. We have Microsoft Copilot. I can tell you that we're looking at other solutions like Grammarly, Boodlebox, and things like that. So we're really trying to expand the AI portfolio to both faculty, students, and staff, while also working on policies and syllabus. One of the things that's really important is, and we'll talk about second, is having an AI policy, AI usage policy. So that's one of the things. I'm also on the Law School Library and Technology Committee. And so we actually have our first meeting next week, and we have a number of initiatives going on. So it's just a little bit.
Well, we have the right guy in the room then.
Absolutely. And just to kind of get us started on the conversation of AI, can you start off in defining what AI is, and specifically what is generative AI?
So 2 things. So if you remember from class, we talked about 2 definitions. The ABA definition, where, it's artificial intelligence is basically mimicking human intelligence. Machines learning to, using, actually we talk about neural network neurons. That's a lot of what algorithms and AI does now, to mimic human intelligence. And the European Union uses it to interpret data, statistical data, and make predictions based on that. So there's 2 definitions that we use in class, and that I think of AI as. Really, taking inputs and data and, making predictions and bringing outputs, whether it could be outputs based on the data itself or, generative AI. Generative AI, you're creating its own content, new content based on, the data that it's been trained on, and it's not making just predictions, it's actually creating new content. And that's what generative AI is. So it could be text, it could be images, it's even video. So it does a really fantastic job, I'll say, of doing Python coding. So if you're looking to actually write code, it actually can create code for you. So it has some very good uses.
In relation to employers, what are automated employment decision tools?
Yeah, so there's otherwise known as AEDTs. they're also in California, they define it as ADS, automated decision systems. So basically, they're using mostly machine learning, which machine learning is the first original form of AI. So let me step back for a second, tell you about the history of AI. So AI has not been just since the last 8 years, because of Gen AI. It's been around since the 50s. It first started with John McCarthy, who was a mathematician who brought a group of thought leaders, computer scientists together at Dartmouth College, and he coined the phrase of AI. So one of the early adaptations of AI was a chatbot called Eliza in the 60s, and it really was based on predicting, machine learning and making predictions. And a lot of machine learning has actually been around for a long time in AI, and especially used in law firms. So when you do searches in Lexis and Westlaw or Bloomberg, it's using actually machine learning to make predictions based on the data it has and the cases, and gives back a factual result. So that's really been that. And generative AI now is actually taking content and text and creating new text. So it's taking all the data that it has been trained on, and is actually making predictions, but it's also creating new text and new images and all that. So that's the term generative AI. So a lot of it's based on what's called algorithms. Algorithms is a set of instructions. I've talked about this in class, as you know, procedures, a step-by-step. And that's how, algorithms are creating the machine learning and also the generative AI. So that's the foundation of AI is algorithms. It's basically a step-by-step process, procedure.
And so in terms of how employers are weeding out people, where's the danger zone with that?
Okay, so there are, and we've talked about this in class. I keep referring class, but it's like the foundation of a lot of what I'm talking about today. There are 4 risks with generative AI and employment decision tools. There's the first thing is bias. So, and it can be unintentional, disparate impact, as we talked about in class, where you have a data set and it's been trained. I'll give you a hypothetical. A law firm's looking to hire a new associate, and most of their associates come from Ivy League schools. And so the data set's trained on those attorneys that work for the firm in Ivy League. It may miss a terrific graduate like from USC Law School, like Faye. So there's things like that. So there's an example of that with Amazon several years ago, where they were looking for software developers, and their database, it was based on the resumes of current software developers who were mostly men. So it was not bringing up qualified female candidates for those positions. There's another issue going on. There's a lawsuit with Workday about their tools that is basically, the lawsuit says it's work as race, age, and disability discrimination. So one of the things is that bias, and it can be 2 things. It could be the data set itself that's not properly trained and not a large enough data set, or it could be algorithms based on rules and rubrics that you created that may unintentionally discriminate against qualified candidates. So those are things that you have to be concerned about. A second one is hallucinations. Ed Walters, who he was one of your reading assignments in class. I keep referring to it. He was also one of our past legal tech seminar speakers. He did a wonderful seminar called The Malpractice of Hunches, and he's very much into data analytics. And so he recently said that generative AI gives you a most likely statistical result, not necessarily the factual result. Now, sometimes they can correlate, but sometimes they don't. And so you see that there's hallucinations, like what as lawyers have happened with the Avianca case, where that's hallucinated cases. And I'm going to talk about some of your work you did in our class in a little while on one of the questions. But that's the second one, is hallucinations. The third is confidentiality. So I'll give you an example, maybe not exactly from an employer. Right now, the ABA Tech Report 2024 talked about that 52% of usage of AI is ChatGPT. The second most is using co-counsel Westlaw, and the third is Lexis AI. So ChatGPT, confidentiality. Did you know if you use even your, let's say, a Page Open AI ChatGPT account, unless you opt out, the terms of service, you opt into their training. So you could be potentially training, doing research, or or if you're doing it for like in resumes and reviewing them, you could be violating confidentiality by simply submitting, information or client information. So that's one of the things you have to look at, and I'm going to talk about that again in a little bit. So there's that explainability, black boxes. That's another risk. So that's the fourth risk. And so it's one of the things that there's so many algorithms, and when you've got these the tools that you were talking about that you use here at Maynard Nexon, or it could be VLEX, it could be any tools like ClearBrief is an AI tool that does a lot of work that I know a lot of firms use. There's so many algorithms, there's so many in code to explain how it comes out with a result. You take an input and you come out with an output. It's very difficult to say how it came about. And one of the things that's required for an attorney is to tell their client, how did you come about with that result? It's likewise also the case of if you're trying to vet potential employees. How did you come out with the result that you took one candidate but you didn't take the other? And so a lot of the AEDTs, there's a question of whether can you explain how they come about with a result, or transparency. So those are the four key concerns that you have with AEDTs.
I appreciate that intake and seeing it in practice, where especially talking about taking in potential employees again could potentially lead into a lawsuit due to discrimination simply by just solely using AI. Employers have to make sure that they're communicating with legal counsel to ensure that whatever they're using, if they decide to use AI, that it's up to code and there isn't any bias that seeps through. And same with hallucinations. I believe there was a case where potential employees were in a virtual interview and they used some hallucination to pose as something else just to get the job. Again, speak with counsel on what are the best practices and just using AI and detecting it. And I guess, what would you say is the best tools or safety techniques that employers should use when AI is being considered?
Oh, I've got several, but I also want to mention there are some also state laws, and New York City has a law on AEDTs that's actually been out for 2 years now, where actually your automated AEDT must go through, have been gone through an audit bias. And also that, you can't, and things like that. And it must be publicly shown that here's the audit that we did, so that, potential employees know that. There's also one that's California is starting, I believe, January or February. No, California is October this year. And they're talking about, they call it ADS. So, about that employees and, potential employees are not affected by potential discrimination, and that, employers using it must go through certain things, have a reasonable, care to when they use that. Colorado is going to have one in February that's more, involves employees, and Illinois is going to have one also that's coming out next year too. So that you have to know about that. So to get back to what you're saying, the first thing I would say is be cognizant of those, that there's potential laws. 2, can't say this enough. And this was, I literally, as I was coming here, Registrar Ramona Keith, who you know well, we talked about, I was coming here and I said, one of the first things, and we were talking about this with the university, have a policy on AI usage. Have a policy on that. Only 36%, or this is a recent survey, only 36% of companies have an AI usage policy. And a lot of law firms don't have AI use policy. So have that first. So that means make sure that you've properly, we'll go through in a second, a couple of the other things, but one of this, just usage of your employees. Make sure they're not using ChatGPT. There's some really terrific orders. The South Carolina Supreme Court had an order recently, it just came out this year, about the usage of AI tools by their employees and also by attorneys that are, appearing before them. And they noted only used properly that have been by the South Carolina courts, used by South Carolina courts. I believe they actually are now using co-counsel. So it was great to say only use appropriate tools. You cannot use ChatGPT. And also they also said to attorneys, please make sure that you are vetted properly if you're going to use AI, that you have a responsibility for, that you're not violating confidentiality, that it's accuracy. And also that's responsible for, as in Ethics Opinion 512 at ABA, you're also responsible for your employees and your staff to make sure that that they're properly using AI tools. So that's one of the things I would think, have a policy. Second, training. Train your staff on these tools. Make sure that they're using it appropriately. Make sure they're using all the appropriate tools, like the tool you had mentioned earlier, Tina. That is a really important thing. Training. The next thing, one of those things about the audit bias I talked about, testing. So testing the data and going through, if you're using a system that's going to review potential employees, and then vet the results as well. So do pre-screening and then post-screening with results. Another thing I cannot stress enough is vet any results. So I'm going to go back to our class. And do you remember the midterm assignment you had to do?
Well, yes, I do. Going back to class, basically pointing out hallucinations, where ensure if you're going to use anything that's dealing with AI, anything that's generated from it and the source that it provides, to check it. And as you've heard, and as I feel like a majority of the world has heard, especially in the legal field, that under great scrutiny of case law has been used, submitted to the court, and it was not real. And again, that is on the practice. But again, going back to employees and just the employment field as well, using a lot of that of AI to vet out potential employees. We should also consider, as you said before, vetting that this is actually not going to lead to a potential bias or discrimination suit. And any information that is generated from that is not being hallucinated in one sense.
Correct. So, well, I want to get back to your midterm real quick. So you were one of the few students who did the vetting. You actually brought up a case. You brought in, I think, in Houston ChatGPT, and then you actually went into Westlaw and actually did, verified or found out you had a hallucination about those cases. So that is an excellent example of what I'm saying. Vet. It's so important to vet. I mean, ChatGPT and other AI tools actually give you pretty good results. Like I said, though, it's what they consider statistically the most likely result. It may not be factual. Often it is. Sometimes it's not, as you saw. And that is really important to understand that core foundation of generative AI tools.
I like to look at it as a resource and not an end-all be-all solution.
Perfect way to describe it.
That you never have to look at. You never have to verify. Yeah. You always have to verify. Certainly in the legal profession, right. and for employers who just want to get it right in a regulated field. So now innovation is moving really fast. All of this AI stuff has moved along really quickly over the past 10 years. And you said it's been in play for 50, but it's really ramped up in the past several years. So what are you seeing as the biggest tech shifts now for the workforce, especially the legal workforce, over the next decade that business owners and HR professionals really need to be aware of and anticipate?
I think what they need to anticipate is that there's going to be greater AI usage by, let's say, those coming out of college, those coming out of law school. I can tell you right now, USC Rice School of Law, we have 3 AI courses. One is a general AI survey course taught by Professor David Selavilla. Another course is using Gen AI for drafting. That's taught by Zoe Niesel, as a new faculty member. And it's, that's a great course. And as you know, technology practice law, we do a lot of AI, and including the midterm that you had to take. So we're doing that. We also have partnered with Hotshot Legal. And we now have an AI certification track micro-certification course required by all the students in Intro to Legal Profession. It's about 70-minute, 4 modules, and Ed Walters is one of the people that's speaks in those modules. So that gives them a certification. They understand the basics and the foundation of AI, because they're just coming in and they're using now, they have a ChatGPT university license. They also have access to Copilot through our Microsoft A5 enterprise license for the university. So this shows them exactly the procedures, the vetting and testing, and the foundations of how AI works, generative AI works. And there are other courses they can take on prompting, and that's a great, it's a skill that's being used. So I think what employers are going to be seeing is that they're going to have potential employees that have a great amount of usage of knowledge of AI, more than they did, let's say, 2 years ago. And then again, it's one of those things is that they're using often, free tools like ChatGPT. And so it's one of those things where they have to immediately, that's why you have a policy to make sure from the ground, as soon as they get in the ground floor, saying, hey, you can't use your personal ChatGPT account for work matters. Okay, this is, that. I think the tools will evolve as well. I think the AEDTs will get better. I still think you need to do the vetting, and obviously vetting and testing, as laws. One of the things also, and I think we talked about this in class as well, is that, for lawyers, check what states you're practicing in, and also federal rules. So I'll give you an example of Western District of North Carolina. The federal rule is that you cannot use generative AI. They have a standing order. You can look up, it's responsible use of AI and legal services. It's run by Duke, and they actually have all the court orders. And you also have the South Carolina Supreme Court order. And Western District of North Carolina, says the only AI tools you can use are for the research database tools, Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg. So you have to be very cognizant of that as well. So when you're using appropriate tools. So understanding, obviously, state laws and all that. I think also employers need to really, again, understand there's AI systems, when they're working with third-party vendors, say, hey, have you gone through an audit test? Is this reliable? Can you, when you're doing your updates, every year, have that. So I think that's very important for employers.
Well, thank you so much for your expertise today. It's a very complex topic. AI is amazing indeed, but it is fraught with potholes if you let it trip you up. So Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Gary Moore from the University of South Carolina, Rice School of Law. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time on Work This Way.